Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mackenzie. Thank you for joining me. As you can see in the title of this video, we are talking about debt today. Debt is a huge issue for a lot of people in America, and it's something that a lot of us struggle with. So I really wanted to do a video on this and talk about my own journey with debt, what that looks like, where it started, where it is now, and where I'm hoping it'll go. And I actually have a very exciting reason to film this video now, and I will share that with you guys in a little bit. But to get started, I just wanted to talk about debt in general. And before we even actually get to debt, let's talk about a couple things that are important to know just money-wise in terms of yourself. So if you're looking at your money and you are just trying to figure out what to do with it, or maybe you've been budgeting and it's just not working for you, you need to try something different, maybe you're trying to pay off debt and you just can't seem to stick to it, whatever the reason may be, there are a few things that you need to look at as you're looking at your money and that you need to know about yourself. Number one is you need to know how your relationship with money is. What is your relationship with money? Are you a spender? Are you a saver? Do you have a lot of fear when it comes to money? I know that's how I started out. I grew up in a household that was middle class, more lower middle class, I would say. We were always able to have food on the table and had what we needed, but we weren't able to take vacations every year. There were a few times when money was a little bit uncertain, and we didn't fully know what things were going to be like in the future. Thankfully, things worked out for us pretty well, but I was always very aware from a pretty young age of what our money situation was. And I was very aware that we didn't have a lot of money. We couldn't spend it on whatever we felt like in that moment. You know, there were a few times, like I said, when we just weren't sure where our money was necessarily going to be coming from. Being aware of this from a very young age was good because I had a realistic expectation of money. I didn't expect for it to just always magically appear, but it did instill a lot of fear in me related to money. I tend to want to have a lot of money saved up just in case, because I'm worried that what if something happens and we don't have the same incomes, or we have to pay off a huge sudden financial burden. There are a lot of ways that could happen, large medical bills, maybe something happens to our house, maybe we both lose our jobs, which has been an issue for a lot of people in 2020. So, it's not a completely unrealistic view of money, but it did give me a lot of fear and prevented me from making actually some good choices with money. On the other end of the spectrum, you have some people who just spend without really thinking about their money. They don't really think about where their money is coming from and how much is really coming in, how much needs to be paid towards their bills, and putting any aside for the future. They just basically check their bank account, and if there's money in there, great. Then they can spend money on whatever they're wanting at that moment. And there's no thought of their financial future. And of course, there's tons of places in between. So what's really important is to know about yourself. What's your relationship with money? What's your history with money? How do you view money, and how do you view your money working for you? This is really important, especially as you're going into a debt-free journey, because you need to know how you relate to money, and how you'll be able to use that or need to change that maybe to pay off your debt. So now let's talk about debt itself. There are a few different types of debt that you can have, and this does vary a little bit person to person. What each type of debt is, it varies a little bit based on your situation, what your debt is, how much your debt is, interest rates, all kinds of things. Everybody's debt is very different, and it also depends on what your income is and what you can put towards your debt. So it varies a lot for each person, but if you've watched any kind of budgeting or debt videos, you probably know there are different types of debt, and some of them are more urgent and need more attention than others. So how I kind of divide it up in my head is there's urgent debt, like credit cards. Credit cards are a huge, huge source of debt in this country. Most people have never learned how to properly use credit cards. My husband and I are very lucky that we both know how to use credit cards very well to our advantage, and we have not ever accumulated credit card debt, and that has really helped us in a lot of ways. Number one, because credit card debt can suck you dry so fast. The interest rates are astronomical, and they build up daily. So credit card debt is a really, really difficult type of debt, and it's one that keeps a lot of people in debt because it's really hard to get on top of, and it's really hard to bring down if you're not very careful about it. Like I said, the interest rates are very high on credit card debt, so that's why credit card debt is an urgent type of debt, because the amount that you owe increases so much from month to month, and it can be really, really difficult to get on top of it and start bringing that number down if you are living paycheck to paycheck, if you don't have a budget, if you're not really focused on paying down that debt. It makes it incredibly difficult to get rid of it, and that can hurt you in many ways. Number one, you have this debt that just keeps building, and so your financial situation will then just get worse and worse. You have more and more that you owe to someone else, and also it hurts your things like your credit score, which will affect you ever taking out other credit cards, which you shouldn't do if you're in credit card debt, or getting other loans, getting a mortgage, things like that. So it can have a huge impact on you. So that's a very urgent type of debt. It's not just credit cards. It can be anything that has a very high interest rate that accumulates very, very quickly. The next one for me is intermediate debt. These are just kind of words that I made up that made sense for me to kind of categorize these debts. So the next one is kind of an intermediate debt. This is things like car payments, student loans, maybe medical bills, things that don't necessarily have such a high interest rate, but they're not or should not be long-term debt. Unfortunately, they tend to be long-term debt for most people, but ideally they would not be. So for me, long-term debt, when you think of a mortgage, you think of, 15 to 30 years is the general amount of time for a mortgage, and that's long-term, obviously. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot of these debts that I mentioned, medical bills, student loans, car payments, those can end up as long-term debt. I know multiple people in my line of work. I'm a nurse, and most of us have student loans from college because you have to have a college degree to become a nurse. And I know many, many people who are 10 or even 15 years into nursing who are still paying off their student loans. That's significant. And that's one of the things that jump-started me into our debt-free journey, because I don't want to be 10 or 15 years into my career, into my family, and still be paying off those debts. So like I said, hopefully those are short-term debts, but they are not as urgent as something like a credit card. Their interest rate is not as high. It's something you can take a little bit longer and will most likely need to take a little bit longer to pay off because they tend to be a larger amount of money. And then the last type of debt is long-term. Basically, we automatically think of a mortgage. And this is something that is going to take a long time to pay off for most people. Maybe you have a very small mortgage. Maybe you make plenty of money to pay that off very quickly. But for most people, this is going to be a very long-term debt. So, first things to do are to know what your relationship with money is and figure out what kind of debt you have. That'll help you figure out how to pay this debt off. The third thing you need to do, which is so important, is you need to know how much debt you have. It's scary, and it's really hard to look at those numbers and to be honest with yourself about where you're at, but it's incredibly important, and it's imperative to your journey to get rid of that debt. It's important to know what kind of debt you have and how much there is, because this is how you're going to figure out how to get rid of it. Knowing how much debt you have can give you the motivation to actually get rid of that debt. It can be really terrifying at first. It can be a little overwhelming, but it can give you the motivation to get rid of it because you don't want to have that debt hanging over your head. And it can also give you a realistic expectation of what your debt-free journey is going to look like. It makes it a big difference if your debt is just $5,000 of student loans or $20,000 of credit card debt or car payments, or if your debt is a $100,000 mortgage. That really will change your approach to your debt-free journey, and it'll also change how you need to think about it and how you need to look at your financial journey as a whole. It's really important to know what needs to be paid off first if you have multiple debts, and for that you'll need to know what type of debt you have, how much it is, all of that. So it's really difficult, but it's where you need to start if you're going to take back your finances and your money and be using it for yourself to hopefully start putting money into yourself and be putting it into your savings, into investments, and building wealth for yourself. This is where it starts, is by knowing how much you have. It's so, so, so important. So with that being said, the exciting reason that I have for sharing this video right now is my husband and I have officially paid off over 50% of our own debt, which is so exciting. It's been a long journey so far, and we've still got a ways to go, obviously, but I'm really excited. And it's really nice to just hit those milestones to help push you towards where you're trying to get to. It just kind of reinvigorates you and makes you see that you are making progress and you are getting to where you want to be. That being said, how do we track our debt? For my husband and I, there are a lot of different ways you can track your debt. It's whatever works best for you. But what I do is when I started this journey of saying, okay, how much debt do we have? How are we going to pay this off? What does that look like for us? I went through all of our different debts, and I looked at whatever the initial amount was that we took out in our loan. Didn't take into account any interest that had built up over the time or whatever we had paid off already. I just looked at the initial amount that we took out as a loan, and I added all of that up, and I used that as our initial loan amount. That's the goal. That's the goal that we're heading for, is that initial loan amount. Then what I do is every month, or honestly a couple times a month, I look at how much debt we have at the moment. I look at what balance each loan has, and I add that up. So say our initial balance was $40,000, and I look this month and we still owe $10,000. That means for me that we've paid off $30,000 or 3/4 of our debt. Now, obviously, we would have paid more than $30,000 when you think about interest and all of that, but it gets really complicated if you try to add interest into the mix. You have to add it into how much you owe in the first place, and you have to add it into how much you've paid off. So for me, the easiest way to track where we're at in our debt payments is to look at that initial amount to see where we're at now, what we owe right now, and use that to gauge how much we have to go. Obviously, like I said, not the most accurate way to see how much you've actually paid, but it's an easy way to keep track of things percentage-wise, so we can say we've paid off half of our debt. We know exactly where we are in the journey. And we know that it's going to cost us more than that 50% number to pay off the rest of it, but we know how far we've come, if that makes sense. I hope it does. And I'm going to show you one thing that also is really great to help keep track of our debt. I have this debt tracker, which is just a great visual for being able to see how much debt you've paid off. It's a great way to stay motivated. Over on this side here, you can put in however much debt you have. Up here at the top is, the way I did it at least, is the total. That's the goal. That's where we're getting to. And then you can divide it up in however many increments you need to track how much you have already paid. So you can go in $100 increments if that's what fits in here, or maybe $1,000 increments, depends on how much you owe and the number of little lines that you use, basically. But this is a great visual aid to be able to see where you're at. It's really handy if you're a very visual person and you want to be able to see, you know, the progress that you've made. So I will link down below the website that I got this from. I got this for free. I just had to print it off and it was really easy. They have a whole bunch of different types of debt trackers like this. They even have ones that specify the type of debt. It'll say maybe student loan or credit card, so you can do each individual debt if you want. I chose to just go by our total debt, 100% of our debt, because that made the most sense to me. My goal is to just get rid of all of our debt, and so I wanted to be tracking where we were at in that progress. And I still do keep track of each individual loan, obviously. Like I said, I check the balances every month. I have a little note in my phone where I keep track of where we're at, and I have like the next percentage that we're going towards and what number that is. So say we owe $40,000. We're at 50% right now, so that would mean we'd paid off 20% or $20,000. My next goal would be 75%, and that would be $30,000. So I keep track in there of where we're at, what the next goal is, all of that good stuff. But this is a great visual aid to just be able to see how far along you are. So that kind of leads into what I want to talk about next, which is why you want to pay off your debt. It's so important to know the why for yourself, because it's going to be very difficult for you to maintain your debt-free journey and to stick to the budget that you need to if you don't have a really good reason of why you're trying to get rid of your debt in the first place. If you couldn't care less about your debt, it's not going to be important to you. It's not going to be something that you're really pushing to get rid of. For me, I want to be able to have a family and to have a house and to be comfortable in our finances, to build our wealth through investments, and to be able to give back, to be able to donate to causes that are important to me, to be able to help people in my life who are struggling. I'm looking towards the future and what I want my future to look like, and that requires getting rid of my debt now. It means giving up a few things, not going on so many vacations, or being very careful and strategic about how we go on vacations, not spending so much money on eating out and entertainment and things like that, not quite spending so much on our house. That's been a hard one, but it's important because house updates can be very expensive, and decor and all of that can be very expensive. So I do what I can in a very frugal way, but I'm looking towards the future of wanting to be able to provide a life for my family that we don't have to worry about where our next meal is coming from. We don't have to worry about what if we don't have enough money for the things that we need, as well as just seeing people around me. Like I said, I know other nurses who are 10 or 15 years out of school and still paying off student loans. I just don't want to have that debt hanging over me for that long. So one thing that hit me really big was I also was in a store recently and overheard a woman on the phone, and she was talking about her mortgage, and she was saying, I just want to get my mortgage payment down. I know we're not going to pay off our house by the time we die, so we might as well be paying less on it every month. And that just hit me so hard because that's my motivation. That's not a place that I want to be in the future. That's such a stressor and such a difficult place to be in, and I don't want that for myself, for my husband, for my family. I want us to be able to thrive in the life that we have, to be able to build on investments that we can make, to build wealth, and I don't want to have debt hanging over me my entire life. Now, that being said, once we pay off this debt, we're probably going to go right back into debt and get a mortgage. But you can use things like that to your advantage to build wealth. You can buy a house, fix it up, use it as a rental property to pay off its own mortgage while you get a second mortgage to have your own house to live in. Things like that, which is a whole different video for a whole different day and not something I'm really knowledgeable about yet. But my goal is to get rid of the debt that we have now, to make some sacrifices now so that we can get rid of our debt, so we can use our money in the way that we want to build wealth for ourselves, to be able to start a family, and to have the life that we want in the future, and not be in a place where we're older and we just have to deal with the fact that we'll probably never be out of debt. That's just not something that I want, and that's what keeps me motivated to keep going and to get rid of the debt and to stay fired up about it. So you need to find your own reason. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. It doesn't have to be that significant. If you just have a couple $100s in debt and you really want to take a vacation, make that your motivation. You want to get rid of this debt payment so you can put all of that money towards the vacation you want to take. That's fine. That's totally fine. Whatever works for you, whatever you need to reach your goals. And those goals are up to you and up to you completely. I can't tell you what those should be. No one else can. Your why is your own reason. I have my own why for why I want to get rid of our debt. My husband has his own why. Each person is going to be individual, and that's okay. But it's important to know what it is so that you can stay motivated to get rid of your debt. So let's talk about actually paying off your debt. So one of the important things, like I said, is to know what kind of debt you have and how much you have. The first thing you should do is absolutely pay off any urgent debt. Things like credit cards, any high interest loans that you've taken out. Those need to be your first priority, and get rid of those, because those are the things that are going to hold you back the most. Anything with a really high interest rate is just going to keep costing you money every day that they exist. So you want to get rid of any urgent debt first. That should be your first priority. Put everything towards that. Now, if you have multiple debts, and this includes multiple credit card debts, multiple urgent debts, or just multiple intermediate or long-term debts, whatever it may be, you can use a couple different methods to pay this off. And you've probably heard of these before, but you can use the snowball method or the avalanche method. So what these are, the snowball method is you take the debt that has the lowest overall balance and you pay that off first. You pay the minimum balance on everything else, and you throw all of your extra money that you can at that loan with the lowest balance, and you pay that one off first. When that one's paid off, you take all of the money that you were putting towards that debt and you put it towards the next highest debt, and you just keep going until you reach your debt with the highest balance. This is a great method for staying motivated, especially if you have any debt that's just a couple $100s or a couple $1,000s, something that'll be relatively quick to pay off. That will help you stay motivated once you pay off that first debt to keep going and pay off the next debts. And it gives you time to build up that motivation and build up your why before you get to the really huge debts that may take longer. It may even take a year or two to pay off. So that's really great for staying motivated and just having a really easy way to see what debt you're paying off next, and a really easy way to keep track of, where you're headed with your debt. However, the avalanche method is you take whatever debt has the highest interest rate and you pay that off first, regardless of what the balance is on any of your loans. So this would fit in with paying off your urgent debts first, because your urgent debts are going to be anything with a really high interest rate. So you pay off whatever has the highest interest rate first, and then once that's paid off, you take all of that money and you put it towards the next highest interest rate. And you just keep going until you get to your loan with the lowest interest rate, and that's your last one that you focus on. This one can be a little bit tougher because it might take you a little bit longer to pay off that first debt. So it can be a little bit harder to stay motivated, but you end up paying less interest in the long run because you're getting rid of those high interest debts first. What we ended up doing was I initially did start with the snowball method with our debt. We had one loan that was just a couple $1,000s, and so that was the first goal, was just to pay that one off. And it really did help keep us motivated for the next goal, because we got that feeling of, oh my gosh, we paid off one of our loans. We have that much less debt now. Now we have one less loan payment to worry about. We can start focusing on these others. I did very quickly switch over after that to the avalanche method, just because I want to save every dollar that I can, and so I want to save any amount that I can on interest in the long run, and that was important to me, and I was very strong in my why I want to get rid of my debt, and I knew that I could stay motivated through those long months of taking a while to get through another debt and getting another one paid off. But for some people, their motivation is going to go away really fast, and the snowball method is great for that because it keeps you motivated a little bit better because you're paying off those smaller debts first. And so you get that feeling a little bit more often in the beginning when you really need that extra motivation to keep going and not to fall off the wagon and go back to all of your old habits. So like I said, you can kind of go back and forth like we did. I definitely would recommend starting with the snowball method and paying off that first small debt first, just so you do get that taste of paying off one of your debts and getting rid of it. That was really motivating. And then switching to the avalanche method of paying off whatever has the higher interest rate once you feel very solid in your budget, in your debt plan, in your reason why you're doing this in the first place, because then you do end up paying less in the long run. But it's whatever works for you. You can kind of go back and forth and pay off a debt that has a low balance first, and then a high interest debt, and then another low balance debt. Whatever works best for you, whatever the reason may be. There's a lot of different ways to pay off your debt, and these are just a couple of them, and you can adjust it as you need. So a great tool to use to look at the difference between the snowball method and the avalanche method is a debt reduction calculator that I found from a YouTube channel here called Frugal Fit Mom. Her name is Christine, and she's fabulous. I love her channel so much. But she had a video talking about their debt, and she had a debt reduction calculator that she had found. I'll try to either link that below or link her video that has it below. But it's really awesome because you can put in what your debt is, how much you owe, what the monthly payment is, and the interest rate. And you can also put in how much total you're putting towards your debt. So if you're making extra payments like me, you can say this is the minimum amount that I always pay towards my debt. And it will be able to calculate for you approximately how long it will take you to pay off each debt and how much interest you're going to pay on each debt, based on if you want to use the snowball method, the avalanche method. Maybe you have your own order that you'd like to pay them off in. You can customize it, and it'll adjust the interest amount that you'll end up paying and the time it'll take you to pay those debts based on this information that you give it. So it's a really great resource to get a good idea of what payment method is going to work well for you, how much you're going to end up paying in the long run, and how long it's going to take you. This is really useful. I update it every once in a while just to get an idea of where we're at. I update it when I change how much we're putting towards our different payments, or if we pay something off, anything like that. It's a good way to get a very realistic expectation of how much you're going to end up paying and how long it's going to take you. And it allows you also to experiment with different methods of paying off your debt, with different amounts of payment every month. Maybe you're struggling with, should we, put some extra money towards our debt, or should we put it towards our savings? Should we put it towards groceries? Whatever it may be. If you're struggling with how much really to put towards your debt every month, this is a great way for you to kind of experiment with those numbers and see how things change as you change those numbers. So another thing to think about is your savings. A lot of Americans do not have a lot of savings. My husband and I are very lucky in that we've built up our savings over time. So we have plenty in case of emergencies, and that has come in handy and also been a little bit of a struggle. Like I said, I tend to be very frugal-minded in sometimes a bad way, where I feel like I need to have a lot of money saved up just in case. And over time, I've kind of let up that idea a little bit and gotten a little more comfortable with money and comfortable with where we're at. And so we have used some of our savings to pay off debt. But this is not recommended for everyone. You definitely need at least a small cushion of savings in case something does happen. 2020 has shown us that it's very important to have a good cushion just in case, because you never know what will happen. We have used some of our savings to pay off debt, but that was because we did have a very, very large cushion in our savings, and we found that it was just more than we really realistically needed right now, and so we could take some of that money out while still keeping a good cushion for ourselves in case something does happen. So if you don't have any savings, I would say definitely build up a little bit before you really push hard for your debt payments. Put money as you can towards your savings until you get a small cushion. Most people say about $1,000. It really depends on what your family is. If it's just one person, you probably don't need that much. It depends on what your work situation is right now, especially right now in 2020. There are a lot of different factors, so you have to decide what will work best for you and your family, but it's definitely important to have a little bit of savings built up before you really start putting all of your money towards debt. Right now, we don't put any money into our savings account on a monthly basis because we are putting all of our money towards debt, and we already have a good sized cushion there. So a lot of people have questions about savings and debt and where they should be putting their money, and it's definitely up to you. It changes from family to family, but I personally, and a lot of other people that I've seen, would say make sure you have a small cushion in your savings, and then after that, put all of your money towards getting rid of your debt, especially any urgent debt that you might have. If you have more long-term debt, this can vary a bit. I would say if you're just paying off a mortgage, you should be putting money into your savings, into retirement, into investments every month, and then also, putting whatever extra that you can towards your mortgage. If you're, going to take 20 years to pay off your mortgage, you don't want to spend that whole time not building up any savings for yourself. So it varies a lot, but for most people, I would say if you have urgent or intermediate debt, get a good cushion in your savings and then put all of your money towards your debt so that once that's paid off, you can use all of your money the way that you want to for investments, for savings, whatever you need it for. The biggest things that I can leave you with are to have a why, to find a really, really good reason for why you want to get rid of your debt. And maybe for some people it's going to be harder than others. Maybe some people aren't that bothered by having debt. That's okay, but in order to build your wealth and to build for your future, it's important to get rid of any debt that isn't serving you. So hopefully this was motivating for you. If maybe you're just starting off in your debt-free journey, you're in the middle of it and you just need motivation to keep going, or maybe you're getting close to the end and you want to make sure you keep up the motivation to get there and you're excited. I'm so happy for you if that's where you're at. It's a tough journey, but it's absolutely worth it. It feels so good, I know, for me to eliminate our debts and to be paying those off. It's a struggle because we do have to give up a lot of things right now. There's a lot of things that we wish we could do or buy or have that we have to put aside for now, but putting that off so that we can have a better future is really important, and that's something that really motivates us to keep going with this journey. So I will link down below a few resources that really helped me, some things that helped keep me motivated, some things that really helped me figure out where I was going on my debt-free journey, how to get there, where to start, how to stay motivated. I will, like I said, link down below that debt tracker, the website for that, and there have a whole bunch of different options. Some you pay for, some like the one I have are free that you just download and print off yourself. I'll also link down below a few other YouTubers that are really great that I love. Jordan Page from friendcheaperfree.com has a lot of different budgeting tactics, and so that was really helpful in figuring out how we want to use our money and therefore figuring out how much we could even put towards our debt and finding ways to decrease our spending on other things so that we could put more money towards our debt. I also love Frugal Fit Mom. She is the one that I got the debt reduction tracker from, and she just has a lot of great content about debt, mostly cooking, but a lot of good stuff. And she does a lot of budget challenges when it comes to cooking, which is really awesome. Moms and Money is another great one. She talks a lot about debt and budgeting and how to use your finances to your best ability and to make them really work for you. Camille Colazzo is another one. Investing with Rose. All great YouTube channels, and I will link them all down below. They have very different content, and I've gotten different information and different motivation from them, but they've all really helped me to figure out where I want to go in my financial journey as a whole, what my goals are, and how to reach those goals. I hope that this was motivating for you and helpful for you in some way. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If you are on a debt-free journey, let me know where you're at, what your motivation is, what's your why. And if you're debt-free, let me know that too, and let me know how you got there. I would love to celebrate with you. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more content. Like this video if you want to learn more about finances and budgeting. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!